In the 1880s, a young woman walked into a doctor's office in Vienna with symptoms no one could explain. Her name was Anna O., though that wasn't her real name. Her real name was Bertha Pappenheim, but in the medical literature, she would become known only by her pseudonym. She was 21 years old, intelligent, well-educated, from a good family, and she was falling apart. She could not move her right arm. Paralysis, the doctors said, though there was no physical cause. She could not drink water. Even when she was desperately thirsty, her throat would seize up the moment liquid touched her lips. She hallucinated. She heard voices. She spoke in languages she didn't know she knew, switching between German, English, French, Italian without awareness. And at night, she entered states of altered consciousness, where she seemed to be living in two times at once, the present and a year earlier, reliving traumatic memories she could not consciously recall.
The doctors examined her. They found nothing wrong, no neurological damage, no physical disease, and yet the symptoms were undeniable, real, debilitating, destroying her life. She was sent to Josef Breuer, a respected physician in Vienna, and Breuer, not knowing what else to do, tried something radical. He asked her to talk, not about her symptoms, not about what was wrong, but about whatever came to mind. Memories, dreams, thoughts she had never spoken aloud, feelings she had buried. He sat with her day after day and let her speak without interruption, without judgment, without censorship. And something astonishing happened. As she talked, freely, honestly, without holding back, her symptoms began to disappear. The paralysis in her arm lifted. The inability to drink water vanished.
The hallucinations stopped. It was as if speaking the unspeakable, naming the unnamed, bringing into words what had been hidden. This act alone was healing her. She called it the talking cure. She called it chimney sweeping, clearing out the debris that had been clogging her mind. And a young neurologist named Sigmund Freud, watching this unfold, realized something that would change the course of psychology, philosophy, and how we understand the human mind. Her symptoms were not random. They were not meaningless. They were messages from a part of her mind she did not know existed, a part that held memories, desires, truths too painful to face consciously, a part that, when silenced, found other ways to speak, through the body, through symptoms, through the strange symbolic language of suffering.
Freud called this part of the mind the unconscious, and he spent the rest of his life trying to map its terrain, to decode its language, to understand why human beings hide so much from themselves, and what happens when what we hide demands to be seen. You've felt this too. Not paralysis, perhaps, but symptoms you cannot explain. Anxiety that arrives without cause, that grips you in moments when you should feel safe. Compulsions you cannot control, the need to check the lock again, to refresh the screen, to repeat the same destructive pattern despite knowing better. Patterns in your relationships that repeat over and over, as if you're trapped in a script you didn't write. Physical pain that has no medical explanation. Exhaustion that sleep does not cure. Dreams that haunt you with images you don't understand, but that feel unbearably significant.
Your body speaking what your mind refuses to say. Your unconscious leaking through the cracks. And maybe you've tried to ignore it, to push it down, to tell yourself it doesn't mean anything, that it's just stress, just tiredness, just coincidence. But Freud would say, nothing is coincidence. Every symptom is meaningful. Every dream is a message. Every slip of the tongue, every forgotten name, every accident is your unconscious speaking, trying to tell you something you've been refusing to hear. Freud called this the unconscious. Not just forgotten memories, not just things you used to know and don't remember anymore, but something deeper, something active, something alive. A part of your mind that holds everything you've ever repressed, every desire too dangerous to feel, every memory too painful to remember, every truth about yourself too unbearable to face. And this part of you doesn't go away just because you refuse to look at it. It stays. It grows. It finds other ways to speak.
Understanding this won't fix you. Freud never promised that. But it might help you see what you've been hiding from yourself. It might help you understand why you do the things you do, feel the things you feel, repeat the patterns you swore you'd break. It might help you stop living at war with yourself. Because that's what the unconscious is, Freud believed. It's the war inside you, the part of you that wants what you're not allowed to want, the part that remembers what you're trying to forget, the part that speaks the truth you've spent your life denying. And as long as you keep that war unconscious, as long as you refuse to face it, you will suffer its effects without ever understanding why. Sigmund Freud was born in 1856 in Freiburg, Moravia, into a Jewish family that moved to Vienna when he was young. He was brilliant, ambitious, hungry for recognition. He studied medicine. He became a neurologist.
He wanted to be a scientist, to discover something that would make his name immortal. And he thought he had found it. Cocaine. In the 1880s, cocaine was not yet understood as addictive or dangerous. It was a new drug, and Freud believed it had miraculous potential. He experimented on himself. He wrote papers praising its benefits. He believed it could cure depression, anxiety, addiction to morphine. He gave it to his friends, to his fiancée, to his patients. He was convinced he had found a wonder drug. And then, people started dying, becoming addicted, suffering psychotic breaks, and Freud's reputation was ruined. His colleagues mocked him. His career stalled. He had failed. But in that failure, he stumbled into something else. Because while experimenting with cocaine, he had been listening to his patients, really listening.
And he began to notice something strange. They would talk about their symptoms, headaches, paralysis, phobias, and as they talked, memories would surface. Memories they didn't know they had. Memories they had buried. And often, the memories were sexual, traumatic, unbearable. And Freud, trained as a scientist, did what scientists do. He formed a hypothesis. What if these symptoms were not physical? What if they were psychological? What if the mind could bury memories so deeply that they became unconscious, and then, because they were buried, they returned in disguised form, as symptoms, as suffering, as the body speaking what the mind could not? This was the birth of psychoanalysis, the method of uncovering the unconscious. And Freud, humiliated by his cocaine failure, obsessed over this new discovery. He began analyzing his patients, and then, more radically, he began analyzing himself.
In July 1895, Freud had a dream, a disturbing dream. He dreamed of a patient named Irma, a woman he had been treating for hysteria. In the dream, she accused him of failing to cure her. He examined her throat and saw horrifying tissue damage. His colleagues appeared and mocked him. He woke up anxious, guilty, defensive. And instead of dismissing the dream as meaningless, Freud did something no one had done before. He analyzed it. He wrote down every detail, every image, every feeling, and he followed the associations. Where did each image lead? What memories surfaced? What hidden meanings emerged? And slowly, painfully, he realized the dream was not about Irma. It was about him, his guilt over a patient who had died under his care.
His fear of professional failure, his unresolved sexual anxieties, his anger at colleagues who dismissed his work. The dream had taken all of these unbearable truths he could not face consciously, and disguised them in symbolic form. A protective mechanism, a way of letting him feel the guilt, the fear, the anger, without having to consciously acknowledge them. He called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. Because in dreams, the unconscious speaks most clearly, not in plain language, but in symbols, in images, in the strange, illogical poetry of the hidden mind. And if this was true, if the unconscious spoke through dreams, through symptoms, through slips of the tongue, then Freud believed he had discovered something revolutionary.
That human beings are not transparent to themselves. That consciousness is a thin layer on the surface of a much deeper, much stranger mind. That most of who you are is hidden from you. And that this hidden part is constantly trying to speak, to reveal itself, to make itself known, and you are constantly defending against it. But here's what makes the unconscious truly unsettling. It's not just that you don't know yourself. It's that you're actively working to not know yourself. That you are, in Freud's terms, repressing, pushing down, burying, hiding truths from yourself because facing them would be unbearable. Repression is not forgetting. Forgetting is passive. You forget where you left your keys. You forget a name. You forget a date. Repression is active. It is a psychological force that takes something, a memory, a desire, a truth, and buries it so deeply that you lose access to it, not because you chose to forget, but because some part of you decided that knowing this would destroy you. And Freud believed this is the central mechanism of the unconscious, that the mind is constantly repressing, constantly burying, constantly hiding from itself, because human life is unbearable if faced directly. Your desires are too dangerous, your memories are too painful, your truths are too shameful, and so you bury them, and you tell yourself they're gone. But they're not gone. They're still there, in the unconscious, alive, active, pushing to resurface. And what you repress doesn't disappear, it returns. In symptoms, in dreams, in compulsions, in the patterns that repeat. Freud called this the return of the repressed. The idea that what you bury will come back, not in its original form, that would be too direct, too unbearable, but in disguised form, transformed, symbolic, coded. You bury a memory of shame, and it returns as social anxiety. You bury a desire you're not allowed to feel, and it returns as an obsession. You bury grief, and it returns as depression. You bury rage, and it returns as chronic pain. The unconscious finds another way to speak, and it will keep speaking, louder and louder, until you finally listen. Anna O's paralysis was not random, it was symbolic. Her right arm, the arm she had used to care for her dying father, the arm she had wanted to use to strike him in anger, became paralyzed. She could not move it, could not feel it, as if her unconscious had decided, you cannot allow yourself to feel this rage, so I will take the arm away entirely. And when Breuer helped her speak about her father, about her anger, about her guilt, when she brought the repressed material into consciousness, the paralysis lifted, Not because talking cured her, but because the symptom no longer needed to exist. The unconscious had found another way to be heard.
This is what Freud understood, that your body is not separate from your mind, that your symptoms are not meaningless, that the anxiety, the compulsion, the pain, the exhaustion, all of it is your unconscious trying to tell you something, trying to bring to your attention what you've been refusing to see. And the reason you've been refusing to see it is simple. Knowing yourself is unbearable. Freud believed that the unconscious holds truths you cannot afford to face, desires that violate your sense of who you are, memories that shatter your story about your past, truths about yourself that contradict the identity you've built. And so you defend against them. You build walls. You create psychological defenses, denial, projection, rationalization, displacement, that keep the unconscious hidden.
You tell yourself, I'm not angry, I'm not jealous, I'm not attracted to that person, I'm not traumatized by my childhood, I'm fine, I'm over it, I've moved on. And your unconscious whispers, you're lying. And because you won't listen, the unconscious finds another way to speak. Through the dream you can't stop having, through the relationship pattern you can't stop repeating, through the anxiety that arrives every time you're about to succeed, through the self-sabotage that keeps you from getting what you claim you want. Freud believed that most people live their entire lives at war with themselves, consciousness on one side, the unconscious on the other. And the battleground is your life, your relationships, your body, your choices. You make a decision consciously, and your unconscious undermines it. You swear you'll change, and your unconscious pulls you back into the old pattern. You tell yourself you're happy, and your unconscious produces symptoms that say otherwise. And this war, this internal conflict between what you know and what you refuse to know, this is the source of most human suffering, Freud believed. Not external circumstances, not bad luck, not fate, but the refusal to face yourself, the refusal to bring the unconscious into consciousness, the refusal to speak what has been buried. Anna O. healed not because Brower gave her medicine, but because he gave her permission. Permission to speak what she had been forbidden to speak. Permission to feel what she had been forbidden to feel. Permission to know what she had been forbidden to know. And when she spoke it, when she made the unconscious conscious, the symptom dissolved. But here's the part Freud never fully said, the part that haunts his entire project. Making the unconscious conscious is not the end of suffering. Anna O. was cured of her symptoms, but she never married. She never had children. She spent the rest of her life working in social reform, fighting for women's rights, living a life of service and solitude. She healed, but at what cost? Because bringing the unconscious into consciousness doesn't make life easier. It makes it harder. It means facing truths you've spent your life avoiding. It means acknowledging desires you're ashamed of. It means remembering things you buried for a reason. It means seeing yourself without the comforting illusions you've built. Freud believed this was necessary, that living unconsciously, living in denial, in repression, in self-deception, is a kind of imprisonment, that you cannot be free if you do not know yourself, that you cannot make real choices if you don't understand what drives you.
But he also knew that most people will never do this work, because knowing yourself is too painful. Because living with symptoms is easier than facing the truth those symptoms are protecting you from. Because the unconscious offers a kind of mercy. It lets you suffer without knowing why. Freud himself spent his life trying to bring the unconscious into consciousness. He analyzed his own dreams. He wrote about his own fears, his own sexual anxieties, his own unresolved conflicts with his father.
He exposed himself in ways that shocked the world, and the world hated him for it, called him obscene, called him perverted, called him a threat to morality.
And he kept going because he believed the truth mattered more than comfort, that understanding the unconscious mattered more than protecting people from what they didn't want to see. But even Freud could not fully escape the unconscious. He broke with Carl Jung, his closest collaborator, in a bitter, painful split. Jung wanted to explore the mystical, the spiritual, the collective unconscious. Freud wanted to stay grounded in science, in sexuality, in the individual unconscious. And neither could tolerate the other's vision. The friendship ended in betrayal, anger, and years of silence. Was this a rational disagreement, or was it the unconscious speaking? Freud's need to remain the authority,
Jung's need to break free from the father figure, the unspoken desires, the hidden resentments, the repressed conflicts erupting into a rupture that neither could fully explain. Freud never answered this. Perhaps he couldn't. Perhaps even the man who devoted his life to uncovering the unconscious could not see his own clearly enough. Perhaps the unconscious is always one step ahead, always hiding, always speaking in code, always revealing itself only partially, only symbolically, only in ways that protect you from the full truth. And this is what makes Freud's vision so haunting. Because if he's right, if the unconscious is real, if repression is constant, if the return of the repressed is inevitable, then you are never fully in control. You are never fully conscious. You are always, to some degree, a stranger to yourself.
You think you know why you chose your career, your partner, your life. But Freud would say you're rationalizing. The real reasons are unconscious, hidden, driven by desires you're not allowed to feel, by memories you've buried, by conflicts you've never resolved. You think you're free, but Freud would say you're not. You're driven by forces you don't understand, by an unconscious that speaks through you, moves you, shapes your life without your permission. And the only way to reclaim any degree of freedom, Freud believed, is to make the unconscious conscious, to look at what you've been hiding from, to speak what you've been forbidden to speak, to know yourself, even when knowing yourself is unbearable. This is the work of psychoanalysis, not to make you happy, not to fix you, but to help you see, to help you understand, to help you stop living as a stranger to yourself. Freud died in 1939 in London, a refugee from the Nazis. He had mouth cancer from decades of cigar smoking. He was in constant pain, and he asked his doctor to give him enough morphine to end his life. He died consciously, deliberately, choosing the moment of his death because he had spent his life trying to bring consciousness to everything, even the end. His legacy is complicated. Some of his ideas have been discredited. His theories about women were often misogynistic. His obsession with sexuality was sometimes reductive.
His methods were flawed, but his central insight remains undeniable, that you are not who you think you are, that beneath your conscious mind lies something vast, strange, and powerful, that this hidden part of you is constantly speaking, and that most of your suffering comes from refusing to listen. You know this. You've felt this. You've had the dream that wakes you at 3 a.m., the anxiety that arrives without warning, the pattern you swore you'd break but keep repeating. You've had the slip of the tongue that revealed what you were really thinking. You've forgotten the name of someone you should remember. You felt your body tense in situations that should feel safe.
These are not accidents. These are messages from the part of you that knows what you're refusing to know, from the part of you that remembers what you're trying to forget, from the unconscious, speaking in the only language it has: symptoms, symbols, the strange poetry of suffering. And Freud is asking you, will you listen? Will you look at what you've been hiding from? Will you speak what you've been forbidden to speak? Will you bring the unconscious into consciousness, even if it's painful, even if it shatters the story you've been telling yourself? Or will you keep living as a stranger to yourself? Will you keep treating the symptoms without addressing the cause?
Will you keep wondering why you do the things you do, why you feel the things you feel, why the patterns keep repeating while refusing to look at the unconscious that's been trying to tell you all along? Anna O spoke, and her symptoms vanished, but she spent the rest of her life alone. Freud analyzed himself, and he discovered truths that isolated him from the world. Jung broke from his mentor, and he carried the wound of that betrayal for decades. Knowing yourself is not a gift. It's a burden, a responsibility, a lifelong work that never ends, because the unconscious is always there, always speaking, always revealing and concealing, always one step ahead.
But Freud believed it was the only way to live honestly, to stop pretending, to stop performing, to stop living a life that isn't yours, to finally see yourself not as you wish you were, but as you are, unconscious and all. So ask yourself, what are you hiding from yourself? What memory have you buried? What desire have you repressed? What truth about yourself are you defending against? What symptom is your unconscious producing to get your attention? And ask yourself the harder question, are you willing to look? Are you willing to speak? Are you willing to know yourself even if knowing yourself changes everything?
Freud cannot answer this for you. He can only tell you that the unconscious is there, waiting, speaking, and it will keep speaking, louder and louder, until you finally listen. The talking cure is not a cure. It's a conversation between the part of you that knows and the part of you that's been refusing to know. And that conversation is the work of a lifetime. Are you ready to begin? If this reached you, if you've recognized your own unconscious speaking through symptoms you can't explain, patterns you can't break, dreams that won't leave you, leave a word below. Tell me what your unconscious is trying to say, what you've been hiding from yourself. I read every comment. You're not alone in the hiding. And if you want more philosophy that exposes what you've been defending against, Sartre's bad faith, Jung's shadow, Kafka's trial, Arendt's banality, subscribe. This is Heart's Country. We don't comfort you. We help you see. We don't fix you. We help you know yourself. Together,